بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. أما بعد, my dear brothers, please don't lean on the wall. Please come forward, fill the lines. The khutbah is part of the salah. Just as you wouldn't leave gaps in the salah, you wouldn't leave gaps in the khutbah. I apologize to anyone who has a physical disability. Obviously, the comments do not apply to you. May Allah forgive us all. My dear respected brothers, elders, and sisters in Islam, I greet you with the greetings of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Repeated from earlier. We thank Allah who has gathered and guided us here up to this very auspicious moment where we have developed the deepest wisdom that is available to man. And that is the wisdom to leave the world behind, if only for an hour or two, and put our forehead on the ground in sajda to Almighty Allah and Almighty Allah alone. I bear witness and testify first in English that there is no God but God. We call Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is nothing worthy of our worship, our praise, our devotion, our sacrifice, except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. 1400 years ago, a human being named Muhammad ibn Abdullah came to this earth and was blessed with the last, final, and perfect revelation of God to man, which we know today is the Holy Quran. There is no deviation, no distortion, no departure from the truth. We say these things in English and we say them in Arabic when we say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, which is the first article of our faith, the constitution that defines the relationship of man to God, and therefore that which regulates the relationship of man to man. As to what follows, in the previous khutbah we discussed the notion of planning. We discussed the idea that we are where we are as a society collectively, and we are where we are as people individually, because we have failed to plan in the fashion that was discussed by Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We talked previously about the notion of planning as beginning with vision, beginning with the fact that you cannot make changes in your life as an individual or changes in the functioning of your society unless you can see that society accurately for what it is. We talked about how hard this was to do. It always starts with the beginning that we consider to be reflection. All of the great prophets and messengers of God spent considerable time outside the world to see it as it actually was. Whether it was Ibrahim alayhi salam, may God be pleased with him, Ibrahim looking at the business of his father, which was the production of idols, and having the ability to sit outside that business and see that idols had no value as gods to man, and to begin questioning that. This came from reflection. Or whether it was Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the cave of Hira, sitting outside the Meccan society that loved him, and yet by reflecting, being able to see that society for what it was. Although it was a place that rewarded him, that rewarded his clan, that rewarded his family, he could still see the injustice in that society. He could still see the way women and orphans and children were treated. He could see the way that the poor were treated. And so through the process of reflection, he got sight. Not necessarily the sight of what was in front of him, but the sight of things unseen. Morality, truth, honor, justice. These are not necessarily things you see like physical objects, but these are the things that create the true sight of man. So we talked extensively about how reflection leads to planning. And in this khutbah today, I wish to talk about what it should inspire planning, which is this idea of vision, where we want to go, who we want to be, what we want to become as individuals and as a community. Vision is talked about in every single aspect of our lives, but it is talked about by people who have, refreshingly, sadly, very little. Every company that owns a hot dog stand says they have a vision. Non-governmental organizations say they have a vision. Television shows say they have a vision. But no vision has come close to providing mankind with the vision that the Prophet ﷺ has blessed us with. And this vision is embodied in two things. It's embodied in the Holy Quran, which is a guidebook that explains to us the nature of the world and the nature of the forces within it. But it is also embodied within another kind of vision, and that is the day-to-day life of the Prophet, which we refer to as the Sunnah, or the sayings of the Prophet, which we refer to as the Hadith, the authentic traditions. The Sunnah and the Hadith consist of things that the Prophet said, the things that the Prophet did, and the things that he saw but did not object to. And this Sunnah is an example of how one man can transform his existence from a life ordinary and in keeping with the traditions of his people to something quite different. to something which transcended, which leapt beyond where people were. The fundamental lesson of the Sunnah, which is never talked about extensively by too many Muslims, is that one man can change the entire world, because one man did. That's the central message of all aspects of the Sunnah. See, today, our young people, unfortunately, they're exposed to Islam in the media and other places, and they're exposed to what I call cartoon Islam. Cartoon Islam, where generally you get somebody who's always angry. They never find somebody who has a smile on his face, always angry. Generally, someone who looks much different from a Western person. So long beard is appropriate. It helps if he has a turban to go with his anger. Generally, when this angry, turban, bearded man is talking, he has to be talking either in Arabic or a foreign language, because he can't be like us, in terms of his message. Or if he is talking in English, the English is so strongly accented that it's clear he got it from someplace else. Perhaps a camp in the desert where he does sit-ups with a machine gun over his head. And in general, this cartoon Muslim is seen in very short clips where he's yelling at the top of his voice. Can't be calm either, because of course the cartoon Muslim is always ready, one inch away from pressing a car bomb or doing something like that. But he's generally angry about something. And what he's angry about, he's completely incoherent. And so then he leads to his call to action, which generally involves killing people, beheading them, blowing up their property, or in some way hurting others. And so these kinds of images of Muslims are broadcast over and over and over again. And they're designed to do a couple of things. Number one, convince the world that Muslims are not like other human beings. Their ideas must be stupid, and therefore they must be stupid. Instead of referring to the achievements of 1400 years ago that have never been duplicated 1400 years since, words like Stone Age, or centuries old, or past, are constantly lumped together with this description of a cartoon Muslim. And believe me, whether you control every hour of what your child watches on television or on the internet, this is what is out there. This is what their friends are hearing in school. This is what your wives and your daughters are hearing. Of course, there's never a woman that's ever broadcast, unless, of course, you can only see her eyes, and she's even angrier than the man that was presented. And so this is how cartoon Islam is presented. Generally, the speakers are always talking about something you can't do, something they're opposed to, or if there's something they're in favor of, it's so radical and different and unlike the life that we have that it's terrifying. So generally this turbaned man is saying that women shouldn't drive, or that kids shouldn't leave their home until they get married, or banks should be destroyed, or whatever else it is always sort of thrown in. And then after a short tiny clip like this, there's some news item related to Islam. Generally where you pick the actions of 1 billion people, and out of 1 billion you find the strangest, cruelest, most backward group of people, and you blame whatever they do on speeches like the one that was just heard. So this is what is out there. And unfortunately, Muslims have not done much of a job of explaining something completely different. At best, we've tried to indicate that our way of life is a religion like other religions. And I can understand why people who have immigrated to another country would want to do that. Hey, you go to church on Sunday, we go to mosque on Friday. You guys used to fast during Lent, we fast in Ramadan. You had a prophet, we had a prophet. The Bible, lots of the Bible is in the Quran, is what these people say. I call these Muslims apologists. There's actually a technical definition for apologist. It used to be referred to in Catholicism and Protestantism, people who defended the religion from people who had no belief at all. It's actually a formal field. You can get a degree in apologetics. And it's related to arguing against people who say there is no God or there's no afterlife or that kind of a thing. But Muslim apologists are different because they're always in a hurry to try to explain what is the same about Islam and every other religion. To hear these people talk, a Muslim could be a Buddhist on Friday. maybe a Christian on Sunday or something like that. You know, they want to tone down all this talk. So we have the cartoon Muslim on one end, who's angry, raging. You can't have a conversation with him about anything because he's decided you're an infidel and his job is to kill you. And then on the other hand, you have these people walking around, generally clean-shaven, wearing a business suit, talking in moderate, slow tones, maybe even smiling once in a while, who are out there to tell you that Islam is exactly the same as any other religion, which always begs the question, if that's the case, why follow it? And so this is the question, of course, that's never really answered. Oh, maybe it's a cultural thing. You know, we didn't really want to speak Hebrew, so we decided not to be Jewish. English was a problem. We like chanting in Arabic. And so this is sort of what occurs, is the two extreme reactions, both on the fanatical side and on the apologetic side, that occur when people have no vision and when people are lost. And neither of these realities is acceptable. Neither of these realities is true. And your children should not be exposed to either reality without a firm, clear, defined response. And that response goes something like this. Islam is not Christianity. Islam is not Judaism. We love our Christian and Jewish brothers. We believe that their messengers were messengers of God, but we believe that they as people, while we love them, while they can be fantastic people, while they do many great things, and while their laws are to be respected and their rules are to be honored, we do believe that the version of their religion that they practice today is wrong. We do not believe that God chose only one group of people to represent him. We believe that Musa or Moses was a prophet of God, but that his regulations were changed. And the way that they were changed was indicated in Surah Al-Baqarah, quite specifically, as a method of explaining how the advice of God to man to slaughter a cow slowly and surely was changed and distorted by constant bickering and questioning to a point where it was almost suggested there was no cow meeting an extensive set of regulations to slaughter. And so it was this death by regulation that caused our wonderful Jewish brothers and sisters to have a view of God and a view of man that is moved differently from the original message that they were given. We love our Christian brothers and sisters. We believe they are some of the kindest people in this world. We are honored to be sharing land with them in this country called Canada, and we wish well for them. But we do not believe that Jesus was the Son of God, because we believe in Surah Al-Ikhlas that God is indivisible, that God is one, that God doesn't have a father, a mother, a son, or a daughter. We do not believe that God so loved the world that he needed to sacrifice his only begotten Son. We do not believe that God needs the blood of man to be satisfied with the duties of man. We don't believe that Isa alayhi salam was God's son. We don't believe that it was necessary for him to be killed for God to be happy with the world. And we don't believe that we need to pray through him in order to have the forgiveness of God. We don't believe that man was born stained by the actions of Adam with original sin. We don't believe this. We don't believe that a newborn baby is tainted with evil unless he's washed in the water of Christ. We do not believe these things. It is because we do not believe these and many other things that Islam was necessary. Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was brought to this earth because the message of God had been changed. It's not because the Arabs were superior to the Jews. That's not true. It's not because, the people in the Middle East needed another go-round. It's not because, the Quraysh basically had been deprived and were, somehow in there. It's not because of some fight between Ismail and Ishaq. It's got nothing to do with any of that. It has to do quite simply with the fact that God loves man.